long on marketing insights, and short on overhyped buzzwords. We'll be drinking in the latest tactics and the coolest gin. Yep, this may be the only live marketing show that also features a gin tasting. This show is being live streamed via our friends at Restream. And if you want to drink along at home, today we're tasting D. George Benham's gin versus the legendary Bombay Sapphire. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from my home studio in New York City. At the risk of being Debbie Downer, it's quite possible, if not likely, that we will be looking at a pretty fearsome recession in 2023. We are hearing the warning signs in CMO huddles as CFOs once again become CFNOs, tightening the purse strings, delaying purchases, and challenging CMOs to do more with less. But here's the good news. Some of us have been here before, weathered the storm, so to speak, and figured out how to thrive even when the sinking tide lowers the opportunities for others. How? Well, first, you need to make sure your brand is considered essential in the minds of your customers who you need to retain, rely on for advocacy, and hopefully upsell and cross-sell if that's an option for your business. And how do you do all that? Well, fortunately for you, we have three amazing CMOs with us today, ready to share their experience and insights into what we'll call customer marketing. So with that, let's bring on Tejal Parekh, CMO of Terminal. Hey, Tejal, how are you? Tejal, how are you?
Very good. Excited to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. And where are you?
I'm actually taking this from Michigan. As you know, normally I'm based out of San Francisco Bay Area, but just visiting some family in Michigan. So it's a
There we
beautiful
are.
Midwestern summer.
You know, you never know where one might be when they're on Renegade Marketers Live. So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile again and noticed that you got your MBA from the prestigious University of Chicago, which has a reputation of being pretty intense. And these with t-shirts saying, "You Chicago, where fun comes to die." So tell us a little bit about your experience there.
I know that it has the reputation of being a very intense place, but my experience was quite the opposite. Amazing. Probably business school was the only school where fun did not go to die. We actually had a lot of fun. Very collegial, very social environment. Lots of TGIFs and just lots of social hours. So honestly, I could never relate to where fun comes to die t-shirts, but I can see where the school gets
Yeah, so we're just going to have to do University of Chicago Business School, where fun happens every day. All right, well, that's very cool. Now, you had a bachelor's of pharmacy, which is a little unusual background for a marketer. Talk a little bit about how you started there. Did your parents say you're going to be a pharmacist, or and first, how'd you get there, and then was there any value in that in preparing you as a marketer?
Yeah, no, I grew up interested in sciences, and pharmacy seemed like a really good option at the time. No parental or any pressure otherwise. It was completely, self-driven. But at the same time, after a couple of years of doing that, I did realize that being in lab, that kind of role did not quite suit me, but it did provide a really good foundation for what marketers, a lot of marketers are, experts at today. For example, it allows you to or trains you to develop this approach where you're constantly thinking about hypothesis, develop hypothesis, test it out, the experimentation mindset. As you know, the world of marketing has evolved so much in the last couple of decades that CMOs who can take that approach have a much better chance of making their businesses successful. So I still think that that was a really good foundation to build on.
No, and I love it, and I talk about this in my book. The whole fourth part of the CATS framework is scientific method, which is exactly that, as you described, is creating a hypothesis and testing it, and go so far as to recommend that CMOs have 10 to 20% of their budget earmarked for their experiments, because you never know when those experiments might become the full part of the larger part of the program. Okay, well, speaking of the larger part of the program, where does customer marketing fit into your overall marketing program?
Sure. Honestly, I think that I'm going to take a step back and talk about essentially what four core areas we typically think about as CMOs when it comes to customer marketing, and of those which are applicable to us today at Terminal. So if you think about customer marketing, depending on the business, depending on the product and your target audience, you're either looking at driving adoption of the product, growing footprint, or you're looking at cross-sell, upsell, which you talked about earlier, Joe. Third pillar is you're looking at driving retention. How do you make those customers sticky and continue to get the most value out of them? And the last one is customer advocacy, which is where I would even put CAB and some of those elements under customer advocacy. And so based on where we are today at Terminal, the two core pillars that we focus on, at least in terms of marketing, that my team focuses on, is partnering with our account executives and account management team on cross-sell, upsell, and doing that in a scalable way, or helping them do that in a scalable way. And we're squarely prioritizing, we're squarely focused on customer advocacy. We just set up CAB, and CAB is a great way. It's one of the most effective mechanisms to identify and turn your customers into advocates. So that is, again, one of those things where if you think about, for us at Terminal, growing the brand presence, establishing ourselves as thought leaders is critical for us at this stage. And if you think about that, customer advocacy, CAB, all of those initiatives ladder up to essentially the overarching goal of growing our presence in the market.
So just in case someone doesn't know what CAB is, it's Customer Advisory Board. And the idea of a customer advisory board is that you actually select these individuals who help you with think about roadmap, maybe even think about source them for decisions in terms of overall marketing. I mean, there's a lot of uses for customer for CABs, as you use that term. Let's just talk about that for a second, because I think a lot of, we had two huddles in the last 2 days, and I would say about half had customer advisory boards. And you mentioned that you just set yours up. So what are the steps that you need to do to even get one up and running?
I'll talk about it at a high level, overarching, framework that one would need in order to set it up. You do need a strategic imperative within the organization for setting up the CAB. Most times there is one, like I just gave you an example of why it's important to do that at Terminal. And for, in general, when one does think about setting up CAB, there's the strategic need for it. There's the, do we have enough happy customers who can participate in that kind of a forum and who can essentially provide that feedback, who feel comfortable providing that feedback. So I think your makeup of customers or whatever have you is also equally important. And then I think in addition to that, internally, as if this falls under marketing, then the right marketing owner that is walking in lockstep with product, with your customer account management team to ensure that some of those goals are being met as well, that there is a very solid set of goals, requirements that we're putting forth in that forum, because these are, you've got to treasure their time, and we've got to be really buttoned up with what kind of questions we're going to them for, or how are we going to use their time. But I think some of the examples that you mentioned, ensuring that we are getting their input on product roadmap is important. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that we do have a solid roadmap that we
Right.
can serve up, right? So I think those are some of the I know I'm giving a broader
No, that's helpful. It's
response.
great. It's funny you mentioned the happy customers thing, because in a huddle yesterday, one of the CMOs was looking to develop this and was given a list of what they thought were happy customers for marketing to call about this, and it turned out all that customer, well, a couple of them just did was rant. So you're like, oh, well, gee, if these are supposedly the happy customers, you may have a problem. But either way, the initiative to start developing a CAB is really a customer advisory board is a great first step, because if you cannot find enough customers to do that, you have a problem. All right. Anyway, we're going to bring on Marca Armstrong now, CMO of Passport, and get her input. Hello, Marca.
Hey, Drew, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you and where are you?
So I am terrific. Thank you for asking. And I am in Passport's headquarters, which is located in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina.
All right. So, okay, we've got 3 states covered so far, Illinois, and I'm sorry, Michigan, New York, and North Carolina. Now, I was digging around in your LinkedIn profile and noticed that you were a 4-year varsity lacrosse player at Mount Holyoke. That must have been fun.
So I love, Drew, how you dig around people's LinkedIn profiles, by the way. I just need to call that out. And yes, it was fun. I think anytime you have a chance to be outside and chase a ball and be with other people, what's not fun about that? So I certainly enjoyed myself.
Well, and one of the things that I sort of really come to respect among the college athletes, I have to say, I know more women college athletes who the lessons in time management, because it's not like you're going to Mount Holyoke and then you're going to be a professional lacrosse player. I mean, this is a 25 to 40 hour side hustle while you have your full-time job of being a student. Now, I'm thinking you must have gotten pretty good at time management.
So definitely time management. I think anybody who is a student athlete has to know how to manage their time. But what I would also add to that, it's about focus and discipline. Right? You can show up at practices 5 days a week, go to games on Saturdays, take Sundays off, or you can meet with your teammates on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the gym before class and go on a long run after a game so that you can be faster, stronger, swifter than the next person on the field. So it's really up to you to decide how you're going to engage, and ultimately what you put into the effort is what you're going to get out of it.
And I'm guessing you took the latter approach.
I may have done that.
That's guessing. All right. Well, let's now get to, we'll switch subjects here, and let's talk about customer marketing and how does that fit into your overall plan?
Sure. So for folks on the call who are not familiar with Passport, we are a company that sells mobility software and payment services, and our clients are municipalities. So at the end of the day, really, our marketing plan is all about the customer. And it's about, and I know we talked about happy customers a second ago, but I'd like to use the term that our client success VP talks about, which is we want to surprise and delight our clients so that they become not just happy, but fanatically happy is what she likes to call them. So at the end of the day, they're clients that we can not only upsell and cross-sell to, but they also become advocates and we can help sell to people that are in our pipeline.
And so fanatically happy, how do you measure that?
So we have there's a couple of different things that we have on a dashboard. What is the use case? Again, because we're a software company. So how are people using our product? We've got a stoplight. I'm sure a lot of people do. Red, green, yellow. Is it red? If it's red, we got a problem. If it's yellow, what are we looking for in terms of the stability of the platform? How is it being used? How many users are on it, et cetera, et cetera. That's one way that we measure a client's happiness with us. The other is, what is their likelihood to buy? So if they buy one product from us, are they ready to buy another? How many products do they have? Do they have the full suite of product? So that would be another way. We've got a churn report that we look at. If somebody churned, why? What happened? Did somebody come in and was it a price game? So there are a number of different things that we have on a dashboard that we look at on a regular basis.
And when you think about sort of marketing in that context, we have a set of customers. What does it, and we know what we want them to be. We want them to be fanatically happy and advocate on your behalf. What are some of the things that you are doing specifically to sort of get that, or at least as you know they're here, you're trying to get them there?
Sure. So during the pandemic, for all of us lived through this for the past 2 years, at the very beginning of the pandemic, municipalities shut down, right? Everybody just went inside. Nobody was out on the street. Nobody was going to restaurants. Nobody was using transportation, et cetera, et cetera. And when you're in the mobility business and you're helping people figure out where to park and you're helping rideshare services figure out how to move about a city, and all of a sudden nobody's doing that, you've got to find a way and a reason to communicate with your clients. So at the very beginning, March of 2020, and that was right around the time that I started with Passport, the whole notion was, how do we talk to our clients around business continuity? What's going to help them get back in business? So we started a series of webinars with clients around the country. And then the webinars actually turned into customer advocacy groups. I know we were just talking about an advisory group, but these advocacy groups were actually regional. And we came up with a topic and we said, okay, what's important to the folks in the Northeast as compared to the folks in the Northwest or the Southwest, Texas, Southeast, that kind of thing. Weather played a big factor. When you start talking to people in the South, in the Southeast or in Southern California, what was happening is curbs were being utilized as outdoor restaurant spaces. Right. And so how do you take a topic like that? And they called them parklets. How do you take a topic like that and have a conversation with folks, for example, in the Northeast? How can they take advantage of it? So it's coming up with conversation pieces that get people engaged, and then they can learn from each other. And then if you, as the vendor, become the people that are actually engaging in that conversation or facilitating that dialogue, people look to you for, what else do you know? How else can you help me? And so that has become a program that we've continued. And now that we're, waning from a pandemic perspective and comfortable being together again, we've actually taken it on the road and done some in-person events in the same kind of fashion. And the feedback has been extraordinary. And people have said, we actually like your events more so than the industry events, because they actually give us an opportunity to talk to each other. Clients can talk to each other. We bring in thought leaders, and it's a great way for people to become advocates, not just of Passport, but supporters of each other.
And what I'm thinking about on several levels, several interesting thoughts. One is, I'm not saying you sponsored interesting thoughts, not I have interesting thoughts.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So one is that when you're doing customer marketing right, you are essentially building community because you're helping them come together over common interests. And so that's an important just thing to park for a moment. But one of the things that also we talk a lot about in huddles, and I talk about it in my book, is that you essentially were giving away anything you could in order to keep them engaged while this very difficult time, right? Because this was a really challenging period of time. And I remember early on in huddles, because we started huddles April 1st, one of the CMOs right away said, the more we give, the more we give away, the more we seem to sell. And I thought, so interesting. And I just want to, before we move on, just talk about, how do you, when you look at all those webinars and those programs that you did, particularly in the period where there really wasn't a lot to sell, how do you sort of connect those dots from, I'm thinking of your conversation with the CEO. Trust me, there will be sales at some point here. How connect the dots from all these webinars and the road shows and the things to revenue?
Yeah, so I think the key point there is, what is marketing's connective tissue to products, and then the connective tissue to the pipeline, right? So at the end of the day, when you have these roadshows or you have these advocacy groups, et cetera, ultimately, what is the opportunity to upsell, right? Where are those people in the pipeline? Where are they on the dashboard? And then when you think about the upsell opportunity, is what is in the pipeline that can be advantageous to that client. So, I was just in a conversation earlier today about fleet management, for example. And
Right.
so, what is the opportunity to upsell a client from a parking solution that they have on street to a fleet solution? And where is that client? And if you bring them to an advocacy conversation, whereby all of a sudden other people are talking about fleet management and what a pain in the tail it is with all of the Amazon trucks that are clogging the Upper East Side. I don't know if you're Upper East or Upper West or where you are in New York, but
it's terrible.
right. So, right, you can't get through anywhere. So what's the conversation that you have with city leaders in New York City around, help me help you solve this problem of congestion?
Right.
And then when people start to hear about how that problem has been solved, then all of a sudden, then there's like, oh, hey, I can actually go be a hero in my city and go solve for this. And I learned about it in this advocacy group with Passport. And by the way, they have a solution. So now all of a sudden you become a prospect. And
Right.
so that's how you have to link it together. And I mean, every marketer knows this. We're not as successful. We can't be successful without the connective tissue with both product and then the go-to-market teams. It all
Right.
has to be together.
But I think the key thing that I want to emphasize, and then we're going to invite Grant to the show. The key thing here is, it wasn't, oh, you heard something and then, hey, I've got a great product for you. It was, you heard something, you connected that dot to more information, so you were helpful. And then at the point where you've sort of been helpful, and now they kind of see it on their own. And I think that this is part of it is, there's such impatience often because we're trying to get business, to go straight from an input that you learned in this situation to an action. But I love the way you connected the dots. All right, we're going to move on. We'll come back to you in a little bit. So let's welcome Grant Johnson, CMO of Emburse. There you are. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Drew. Great to join you once again.
Yes, Grant is the star of episode 249 and 287 of Renegade Marketers Unite. So, and where are you on this fine day?
I'm actually on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. Our PE firm K1 does 4 summits a year, marketing, sales. I'm actually joining the finance summit since a lot of the Emburse product is sold to the Office of Finance. So pick the brain of a few CMOs. Market research is fundamental to marketing. So it's a great day in Palos Verdes.
There you go. God, I love that. Only we played tennis against them in high school. So that's about the only time I spent there. Anyway, on your LinkedIn profile, you, of course, went to undergrad and grad school in California and have spent most of your career on the West Coast. So what, you spent a couple of winters in Boston and just said, no, thanks. Don't need that.
Yeah, it was a great first CMO gig from 2009 to 13 at Pegasystems. But yeah, after 4 winters, I'll remember coming back to escape a winter. My wife and I were driving, and we looked at each other along PCH, and we didn't have to say anything. We both knew it was time to come back. 4 winters. Yeah, I love the East Coast to visit.
Well, I'm a California boy at heart, but I married a girl from Buffalo, New York, and she loves the season. So there you have it. So, one quick question. What was the worst job you ever had? And what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, early in my career, I was hired to be a marketing manager and the company was a bit in trouble, and the director was trying to find a way out of the current situation and asked me to go put together a plan. And said, like, there's the room, go in there and come back in a month with the answer. And I was just miserable because, as a more outgoing person who really enjoys working with teams, and my personal mission is to move others to action. Makes sense that I'm in marketing leadership, right? And I just was stuck in a room, and I couldn't imagine a worse career path than being an individual contributor working on plans versus working with teams. So needless to say, I went on to my next career assignment on my own accord, because that was not for me.
There you go. All right. Well, so now we're talking customer marketing. And I know in Emburse, you have a lot of brands, although there's consolidation going on. Give us a sense of an overview of your customer marketing strategy and how important it is.
Yeah, it's really critical to our growth. I started together with our head of our CRO and head of customer success. And, from the inception, we felt that we needed a flying formation, aligned teams, that we would set mutually shared goals. And we've just grown the business. I had one person to start. Now I have three. I'm sure I'll have four or more next year. And, as we've grown the customer marketing, we've also matured our sophistication. I would say we never did spray and pray, but we knew who the customers were. But we're orchestrating more how we contact them, when we contact them, what offers we make to what segments or cohorts at what times, and bringing those customers along on their own journey to spend optimization, which is really what we offer. Help companies optimize their spend across the continuum of expenses, invoices, and cards.
And so, first of all, I want to you mentioned people. You have three people. What are their roles? What do they do?
Right. So there's a leader who's the director, who started as the first person in the group, and oversees it. But we have, as you said, we have multiple product lines, and so we have a certain cadence. There's a certain sophistication and depth of configuration within an enterprise customer. So we have one person overseeing that. That's the leader, and then we have one for our what we call our mid-market customers. And then we just added this year, because we've been adding we have over 18,000 customers, a lot of SMB customers. They have unique needs. They probably don't avail themselves to our entire portfolio. They don't really need that, those solutions, if you will, but they can certainly add one or two or three more. And so by having folks, they all help each other, but they specialize in one of those three major market segments.
And what's great, so one of the things that came up in the huddle today that we had was this notion of making sure that your individuals in this department have the expertise, that they really are subject matter experts. And so one way of helping you get there is by breaking up into these segments. How do you make sure? And this was an interesting question that came up, which is, these jobs are sort of somewhat service and somewhat sales, and sometimes it's hard to find a salesperson who can really be a subject matter expert, or a subject matter expert who can really sort of move a conversation along. I'm curious where the role your folks, are they more on the success side or the sales side, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I would think they're more on the customer engagement side. I guess I've given you a third option, right?
Perfect.
Because they have to be, tight with customer success. Is this a net promoter, or is this account in trouble? They've got to be tight with sales. Like, is this a compelling offer to make? I mean, is the customer care? Do we give them a 30-day trial? But really the engagement, like I'll give you an example. We recently implemented Pendo, as many other companies have, for in-app messaging marketing. And the first thing we did failed miserably. And, people would, run in the hallways, if they weren't a hallways, not a virtual, and they'd be crying about it. But, we learned. What did we learn? That's the most important part. And, so we're going to adapt the next in-app offer that we do that was probably overwhelming the first time. And so just being adaptive and making sure we have engaged customers. We've got an event coming up. Part of our customer marketing is our both virtual and in person in Chicago. We'll have coming up next week of 100 attendees, and which to us is the right number, right? We weren't looking to get 1,000, but those that want to travel in person. And we've really curated the content, and the customer marketing team's involved in that. We've got penetration to certain verticals like professional services or higher ed, and so we've got birds of a feather get-togethers. That's more value for the customer, right? And so within that, they'll have somebody talk about how they've adopted some other part of our portfolio. That's so much more effective than us sending 10 more emails, if you think about it, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, boy, a lot of thoughts going on there in terms of, first of all, just admitting that you tried something, it didn't work. We're going to fix it. Thank you for just sharing that. There's a few CMOs who will be listening to this who go, yeah, oh God. But then let's just, before we get to the next segment of the show, give us things that you are doing to ensure customer satisfaction. You mentioned the Chicago event. So let's talk about some of the other things that you're doing.
Yeah, if we could bring up the landing page, we actually use, we have a community called the Emburse Collective. I could just give you a visual tour the picture would really tell the story fast. So I don't know if you can see this here on the screen, but it's just, if you log into the Emburse Collective, we just came up with that fun name, collectively helping each other. And you can see like, hey, there's a focus group. Is analytics, do I need analytics for my business? Let me find out, right? Emburse in Motion is the name for an in-person event. If you're a new customer getting started, you can see there, how do you collaborate with other peers? They might have answers to things that you're doing in sharing your stories. What's product news that's relevant to you? So it's really a self-guided, customer-driven portal, and you get the value out of it that you want. The time you invest, do some fun things, and you can see there, welcome and humanizing work is our brand mission anyway. And so it's gamified like a lot of these. You can see everybody's an optimizer, and you can get to the next level if you want to participate. And so, we do have fun with it, but we try to make it that the customer can decide how much they want to get involved. They want to do a case study. They want to go to an Emburse in Motion, an in-person event. So that's really how we've constructed it, that we can have a constant pulse that customers, can help stay connected versus us just always like, hey, let's reach out once a quarter, send an email every 3 weeks.
Got it. Okay. And you're using Influitive for that?
That's right. Yeah, we've had that for over 3 years, and they've worked with us. We've adapted it. It originally was one of our product lines. Now all customers can join the collective and, learn kind of like yours, share, dare, and care. Certainly share and care with each other.
Excellent. All right. Well, speaking of share, care, and dare, it's time for me to do a little commercial, if you will, a plug for CMO Huddles. So CMO Huddles was launched in 2020. It's an exclusive community of over 100 highly effective B2B CMOs who share, care, and dare each other to greatness. Everything about CMO Huddles is designed to be a force multiplier, helping you, the CMO, make faster, better, and more informed decisions, where one inspiring hour a month delivers 10 hours of perspiration saved. Since no CMO can outwork their job, CMO Huddles is here to help you outsmart it. And since we happen to have 3 huddlers here, I would love to bring them back and say, hey, anybody want to share your experience? Let's see. How about Marca? Would you like to share your experience so far?
I would be thrilled to, Drew. So the wonderful thing about being a part of CMO Huddles is you get connected, I have been connected with some incredibly smart folks. All of us have certain disciplines that we're good at. You can be on a conversation with somebody or in one of the huddles where you talk about marketing automation, for example, and then you pipe up and you say, yeah, I'm really struggling with my current platform. And the next thing you know, 5 people chime in and say, yeah, I'm struggling too. And then 5 other people will say, well, here's how I solved that problem. So it's real-time solution-based feedback. And then you can go off and have your own conversation outside of the huddle itself. And I've found that to be extraordinarily fruitful.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Grant, you've had a chance before to talk about this. Oh, we'll do Tejal. Tejal, what would you say?
I think it's again, to echo Marca's comments, amazing community. I can remember at least a couple of instances where, Terminal is a technical talent marketplace, and I was keen to understand how some of the other CMOs might set up their marketplace teams, and it was fantastic. It's a great way to learn from others in a low pressure, low stakes way.
Love it.
I've really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Grant, any last insights?
Well, don't go it alone. Well, the first time I was a CMO, there wasn't huddles around, so we can all benefit from the learnings of others who pioneered certain paths that we aspire to, as well as share some of our experiences. And exactly as Mark and Tejal said, I've on a few occasions already, I've connected with other folks, mostly for other people on my team that, hey, we want to do this, and they have somebody who's done that, and people are always willing to share, which really makes it a great community.
I love it. Well, we have some recorded comments because we're going to go to that, and then we're going to grab our gin and do, even though it's middle of the day or morning for Grant, we're going to do a quick gin tasting, and we'll be right back.
I love the way that you are able to bring together experts and practitioners to share their experiences and to accelerate learning.
Just by listening, I've tripled my experience.
It's a great way to have these conversations with your peers.
Even if you miss, an actual live session, just the capture you guys do of the notes, the tidbits, the takeaways, just super valuable.
It's such a nice forum to be able to bond with other marketing leaders that are facing the same things that you are.
There's just so much goodness from the learnings and the dialogue and everything else.
So it's really nice to connect to peers that are B2B.
The Slack channel, I think, is amazing. There's just some really helpful ideas and thoughts and things being shared in there as a backstop underneath the huddle actual meetings.
Because of the format of the CMO huddles, there's, maybe 10, 15 people on each of the sub-tier groups, which makes it really easy to build one-on-one relationships.
It's a community that I think I really needed right now, so thank you.
If you're a B2B CMO who can share, care, and dare with the best of them, ping me, Drew Neiser, on LinkedIn or apply at cmohuddles.com. Okay, Melissa, gin tasting.
All right, here we go. It looks like you're holding the D. George Benham's gin.
Yes. D. George Benham gin. That's what it looks like. The Sonoma Dry Gin.
Yeah, so the D is Derek, I believe. Derek George Benham. He created this gin. It's based on his many travels around the world. And the gin is made in a microcolumn still. It kind of looks like an organ in a way, like that you play. But it allows for each flavor to be distilled individually so it can keep its intense taste. From the reviews I saw online, it is better mixed than it is straight. So go ahead and pour a little bit and taste it. There's some interesting botanicals in here, including peppermint. So I'm interested if you'd be able to taste that.
Funny, I got the orris root, that sort of root beery thing going. A little, I thought it was anise at first, but yeah. What do you get, Grant?
Yeah, I don't actually have a little bit of licorice in there.
Yeah. I think that's the orris.
There is orris root, and there's star anise, and
anise.
Yeah,
pushing very hard there. Almost the juniper is very subtle.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. So the second one is Bombay Sapphire Gin, which is a pretty classic one. This is a British brand launched in 1986, and the name refers to the Star of Bombay, which is a 182-carat sapphire gem that was mined from Sri Lanka and is now on display at the Smithsonian Institution. This should have a really strong smell and quite bright taste. What do you think?
It's funny. I've just come to, whatever reason, the Bombay just doesn't do it for me. And even though the Benham is, I can see why they say not to be drunk. I still like it better. I don't know. What do you think, Grant?
Yeah, I think the Bombay is a little smoother. I think I would mix the Benham. I'm getting your own particular preference. I did taste a little bit of the lemon and the licorice root on it, so it it just sort of met my palate with more my taste. But I mean, very fine in both of them.
Cool. So since Benham seems to be the winner, we're going to ask Nicole about one of the botanicals in there, which is a really fun one. It's called Buddha's Hand. Nicole, what is Buddha's Hand?
Hi, everyone. So Buddha's Hand is a really unusual shaped citrus fruit believed to have originated in India and then brought to China by Buddhist monks. It symbolizes happiness and longevity. As you can see there, it looks like it has fingers, hence the name Buddha's Hand. And fun fact, there's no plump, juice, or seeds, only rinds, and it's used as a zest, or you can candy it.
Wow, that's very cool. Nicole, thank you for that. We'll see you later.
Bye.
All right, let's bring everyone back. Thank you, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring everyone back. And let's talk about the business value of customer retention. And when we're putting together quarterly or annual growth plans, and it'll be interesting because hopefully we're still all looking for growth next year. Current customers could be, I don't know, 25 to 50% of growth. I'm just curious, and this is, we're among friends here. Is this range about right for you in terms of growth and how you look at it? Anybody want to sort of?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that's a good range. I think for us, I'm thinking about our net new bookings target and from existing customers for what we call cross sells, 25%. But if you add in retention and what we call upsell, which is product with additional seats, for example, it could be up to 50%. It's pretty significant.
Okay, go ahead.
I would echo that. I think from our perspective, it's probably on the higher end on the 50% range because you're looking at that upsell opportunity.
And the reason why I wanted to sort of put that out there is if existing customers are 50% of your growth opportunity, and I would then say, are you budgeting 50% of your marketing to customer success? By the way, your email open? I'd love it if you would turn it off so we can hear that ping. Someone has their online open. But so that's the question. Let's just say, for argument's sake, the current customers could end up making 50% of your growth goals. Did they get 50% of the budget?
We don't necessarily allocate it in that sense. There's also a few factors to consider, right? If you think about it costs more to acquire a customer or turn prospect into a customer than to retain a customer and grow that customer. And so the approach to saying that, hey, if 50% of revenue is coming from existing customers, then should we be putting 50% of our budget there? That wouldn't fly because it costs a lot less to grow these customers. But I have experimented, at least in my prior lives, just carving out some budget for customer marketing alone, and just treating it as a separate bucket overall. But yeah, I think in general, I would say it varies between 15 to 20%. I would say I have not allocated much more than that to customer marketing.
Marca, Grant, do either of you have separate budgets? And, how do you look at budgeting for customer marketing?
So I'll chime in because I think Grant's answer might be different given what I've heard about his organization. But I have a budget and it's more tactical in nature in terms of how it's split. And then based on those tactics, you go after net new versus customer. So I don't have it broken out separately from customer marketing, existing customers versus net new. It's the way my budget works. It's more around the tactics that we employ. So whether it's events versus digital versus, I've got a government relations piece of the business, et cetera. So that's the way I look at it.
And so Grant, let's take the example of your customer event that you mentioned in Chicago, where you're having 100 customers there. Where's that budget come from? Well, and I know, let's assume there's one big marketing budget, but is there events, and because there could be prospect events too, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We have a dedicated customer marketing budget. That's part of it. The 4 events we do in North America and a couple in Europe. And we do invite prospects. We had one in New York a few months ago. We had like 15 prospects. So far, Chicago, I said 100 customers. Maybe there'll be 10 prospects. Who knows why that they're in other states at this time? We thought we'd get as many there as New York, but yeah. So it's dedicated. The Influitive app, that whole community, that's part of a dedicated budget, as well as the incentives that we offer for participation. And we find that I think, as Tejal said, it is a lot more efficient for us, and so we don't have to allocate that much of the budget because they're customers. You got to keep in mind that there's a whole customer success organization and customer support, and if they're adding additional functionality, implementation team, so they are getting surrounded by a lot of human resource as well to make sure their experience is satisfactory and sustainable for their advocacy long term. But we absolutely have dedicated people and programs, and will continue because the return on that investment's been really good so far.
Interesting. So I want to get back to that, but as I'm thinking about it, if I added up all the dollars of customer success and customer service and customer marketing, it might add up to a pretty big number that might rival your acquisition number. So I guess that's one way to do it. But you did mention the term ROI, and that's sort of the next area of this. How are you, because all of these programs have different elements, right? I mean, we have events and we just want someone to get engaged. How do you measure effectiveness of your customer marketing? And Grant, you said good ROI, so let's start with you.
Well, yeah, they're all in Salesforce and in Gain side, and if there's an active opportunity, do we accelerate, or because we introduced our new Analytics Pro suite, did they try that out? And we report on it quarterly. We, like every company, we have KPIs, OKRs, or those 3-letter acronyms, and we're looking at you had a guest recently talked about the customer journey and how many touches, and so we're looking at that. I mean, that this really, especially when you can meet in person and have that one-on-one session, that we can see that it's an accelerator to trying to close some additional sales, and therefore we can see the ROI. And then we'll spend over $100,000 on these physical events. They're not inexpensive, mind you, I think you well know.
Yeah.
So we're looking to get a couple million in pipeline. So we have ambitious goals, but so far so good.
Right. As we say, revenue in the room. So you spend $100,000, but there's $2 billion in revenue in the room, or whatever the number is. And that makes sense. Marca or Tejal, from measurement standpoint, what are your go-tos? Let's start with Marca.
Similar. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tejal.
I think similar to what Grant shared, we use a similar approach, and I've found that approach to be very helpful, which is looking at, equating number of touches or tracking number of touches and seeing how that eventually affects any kind of cross-sell, upsell, retention opportunities. And you do that enough number of times, then you're able to measure it at an empirical level and really get a sense for, do the number of touches increase the likelihood to cross-sell, upsell, and hopefully close additional pipeline.
And what you're really looking for there is sort of correlation, right? Is that if we do this, and this, and we should get this outcome. Marca, anything to add in that measurement area?
So there's one metric that I hold the team accountable, or we all hold ourselves accountable to, and it's the ARR that we influence. So the revenue that we influence as a percentage of overall pipeline target for the year. of those customers that exist and the cross sells that you're trying to get to. So if 50% of our pipeline is coming from existing clients, then how many of those existing clients, what's that percentage of the pipeline that we want to influence based on the pipeline that we have, and how do we go about and do that? So that's kind of at the top level from an OKR perspective, how we look at it. And that's done through digital means, that's done through government relations means, that's done through webinar/event means. So all of those things ladder up to that overall metric.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We're going to come back to that. But now is the point in the show where we have to ask, what would Ben Franklin say? And I think part of this whole conversation is that we're talking about, you have a good product, you have a great product, and your customers they're probably happy with what it is that you're providing, and you shouldn't hide that. So I think what Ben would say is, hide not your talents, for use were made. What's a sundial in the shade? Okay, so we're not going to hide our talents. We are not going to put a sundial necessarily in the shade. Customer marketing we got to bring it out into the sunlight. So I want us to get at this notion of these separate worlds of customer marketing. I mean, in huddles today, we had a number of folks talk about how NPS, Net Promoter Score, was this magic number for a set of people, not everybody, but for a set of people. And because they didn't want to measure them in sales, they didn't want these folks to be forced to, because what you incent, right, is what people do. So talk a little bit about these separate, we've got customer support, we've got customer growth, and we've got one measured in one way and one measured in another way. Where do the twains meet? That's probably a tough question, but I'm going to ask Grant, how are these, what's the structure here?
Yeah, well, no, for us, there are actually two separate components of our brand's measurement system that I think I might have shared with you before.
Right.
We have a number of various metrics that we use to gauge the growing strength of Emburse in the marketplace, and certainly Net Promoter is one, but customer adoption, it's to some extent it might be more of an indirect. It's not to say that a dissatisfied customer is going to embrace your additional cross-sell products. That's pretty unlikely. But even if you have like a flat Net Promoter Score, if you have growing adoption of a number of products per customer across the portfolio, maybe it's support times. They're kind of happy, but they just don't want to wait this long. It's not the product's working. So you got to sort of dig into what the correlation between those two scores are not necessarily one moves in one direction, therefore the other one's going to move in the same direction.
And that gets us into this area where when customer marketing programs aren't working, what's usually the problem? And this way we can cite about, you don't necessarily have to have existing, you can cite examples from your career. Tejal, you're nodding your head. What's not working if your customer marketing program isn't happening? What's usually the problem?
Depends on the kind of customer program that we're talking about, right? So the example that I just talked about, where if we are measuring, and this is not a case at Terminal, but I've seen this in my prior experience. For instance, if we're trying to ensure that the customers are nurtured, through several touches, and we're able to essentially get them to convert, marketing needs that information from the account management team or customer success team in terms of who are the customers that we should be targeting, right, for these touches. If we are going to put up an event like Grant was talking about, we need that intelligence from customer success on that with sufficient, with high enough fidelity to really hone in on those few clients, few customers that we need to go after. Where I've seen that doesn't work so well is when that information exchange is not happening in an effective way, in a way where it supports the overall business goals for both customer success as well as marketing teams. So I think it's critical to really understand what is the goal for a particular initiative or a project, and really ensure that the teams are really aligned on that. I'll give you another example that at Terminal, where we were trying to make sure that we were producing enough customer testimonials, if you will, right? So how do we get the advocates to speak on our behalf and essentially record it? And for a while there, it was all the process was set up where it was all pulled from marketing. Essentially, marketing requests every few weeks, every few months, who are the customers who are successful that we could connect with and move this, move towards testimonials. And after going through several rounds of those, rounds of pulling for customer names, we realized that this was not very effective, and we flipped the switch, flipped the process, and we said, all right, customer success, when you think you have a happy customer, you tell us who are those people that we should be reaching out to. And based on that, we also aligned various goals, where customer success team was then responsible for, on a quarterly basis, submitting 2 nominations for this. And the process just felt like it was finally effective, and things were moving, and we were moving a lot faster. So I think it's about understanding what the goals are, understanding where the friction is coming from, and then just realigning to make sure that you're setting up the teams for longer term success.
All right. So Marca, some final words of wisdom for CMOs who are looking to strengthen their customer marketing programs.
So Drew, I'm going to keep it really simple. If you're going to be successful in a customer marketing program, it's got to be a win-win. As a client, you want something that's going to make you look good and you're going to benefit. And then obviously as the supplier, you're looking for information and you're trying to turn them into advocates. So whether you are doing webinars, whether you're doing digital programs, whether you've got some kind of advocacy forum, the way the grant has set up, it's got to be something where you're receiving information and the client is getting something as well. So as long as you've got that win-win set up, I would articulate and advocate that your customer marketing program will be successful.
And it's such a great point. It really is about a positive exchange of value, right? Because you're asking a customer to do something typically, and you better be giving them something of value to encourage them to do it. Okay. Grant, final words of wisdom.
Well, certainly you need a dedicated budget and people, but to me, the most important factor in customer marketing success is customer understanding. Make sure your team really continually gathers that insight so they can be relevant and meaningful to customers who we want to adopt and more of our platform and retain as customers for life.
And I just thank you for sharing, reminding us. So yes, we've got to have this one win-win situation. Well, you can't get to a win-win situation if you don't understand your customers, right? Because they're the ones that you're hoping to influence. You did mention budget. Okay, Tejal, one last way of words of wisdom for CMOs looking to strengthen their program.
In addition to what Grant and Marca mentioned, I would say, customer success teams, your customer success teams are going to be your strongest partners for customer marketing success. And so, focus on ensuring that you're building relationships, you have an advocate who understands how customer marketing can impact their job and how you can better partner together. So just ensure that you're setting up a good relationship and just overall a framework for success there.
Awesome. All right. Well, Tejal, Marca, Grant, you're all great sports. Thank you, audience, for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about international marketing with Jacques Boutel, Dean Nichols, and Olga Noha. All right, Melissa, cue the music. Renegade Marketers Live is produced by Melissa Caffrey. Our intern is Laura Parkin. Our botanical expert is Nicole Hernandez. For show notes, past episodes, and the latest on my book, Renegade Marketing 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, please visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.